Welcome to Immigration Uncovered, the DocketWise video podcast where we dive deep into the dynamic world of immigration law with the latest developments, cutting-edge practice management strategies, and the transformative impact of legal technology. I'm your host, James Pittman. I have today Danielle Goldman. Danielle is the co-founder and executive director of the Build Fellowship. The Build Fellowship, as Danielle is going to tell us, is a novel program for bringing H-1B workers to the United States. So Danielle, welcome so much, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yep. So tell us, let's talk about the mission of the Build Fellowship, what it's all about, and how it works.
Amazing. So we see a world at the Build Fellowship where the best and the brightest talent who are contributors to companies and building companies in the U.S. are able to stay and thrive here. And that is not necessarily the case today because of the restrictive immigration system that we have. And we have been committed for the past 5 years to building a solution for these individuals to come and contribute and also along the way train the future U.S. workforce.
So what inspired you to co-found the Build Fellowship? I mean, how did you arrive at this point?
I have a funny story about, I go
Let's
way
hear it.
back to my childhood.
Sure.
Because I grew up with a father who is an immigration attorney, and Jeff Goldman, I call him Jeff. It's a lot of people are curious if I'm always calling him Jeff, and the answer is of course, because I had to practice even at the dinner table calling my father Jeff. But I grew up in a household where we appreciated and understood the value that immigrants bring to the United States. And I always knew the stories from as a young girl of these scientists coming to the U.S. and working on new therapies and drug development, and the founders who came here to build companies because of the opportunity to get funding. And as I grew up, the legislation didn't change, and things were still just as restrictive as when I remembered my father telling stories at the dinner table of the individuals getting shut out. And I did not go into this right away. I started in global health as a consultant, but I ended up having countless brainstorms with Jeff about what could be done. And he's an incredibly innovative legal mind, and he knew about the cap-exempt H-1B work visa, and he worked in Massachusetts to develop the country's first cap-exempt model called the Global Entrepreneur in Residence Program. And after successfully launching and running that program in Massachusetts, he came to me and said, how could we scale this? How could we leverage this model and do something really great for companies and for founders? And that's what we built together starting in 2018.
Okay. Now, the Build Fellowship is a program, and it's run by the Open Avenues Foundation. So let's talk about the relationship between Open Avenues, what it is, and how it administers the Build Fellowship.
Yeah, so it's actually the other way around. Jeff and I built Open Avenues Foundation as a nonprofit that is affiliated with universities. And for 5 years, we ran this innovative fellowship program out of Open Avenues Foundation. And as a nonprofit affiliated with universities, we, as Open Avenues, have been a cap-exempt organization and able to sponsor the fellows in our program for part-time cap-exempt H-1Bs while they train students from our partner colleges and universities. And this has been our model. We identified that there is an opportunity, an amazing chance for foreign nationals to spend just part-time working in cap-exempt status, spending that time contributing to U.S. colleges and universities, and staying in the United States. And when they stay in the United States, they are able to have a full-time employer, whether it's their own company or whether it's a company that's larger in the United States that's not cap exempt, file a cap exempt H-1B as well. All of this happens outside of the lottery system.
Okay, so now is the Open Avenues Foundation, is that going to be the entity that's actually going to be filing the cap exempt petition, but it's partnering with other, let's say, universities or research organizations? Do I have that much correct?
Right. So Open Avenues Foundation did this successfully for the last 5 years. And what we recognized in 2023 was that there is a potential to do this beyond Open Avenues Foundation and to have other nonprofits run fellowship programs where they have part-time positions for foreign nationals to work, contributing to U.S. colleges and universities part-time, and have concurrent employment at startups and growing companies around the U.S. And so the Build Fellowship is now this next phase of Open Avenues Foundation. We will be launching multiple Build Fellowship programs at nonprofits around the U.S. and really scaling the fellowship model.
Okay, so the Build Fellowship is sort of the expansion of what you were doing through the Open Avenues Foundation.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's just give a little bit of context for anyone who's not familiar. So many of the listeners will know this already, but for anyone who doesn't, so H-1B visas are a very sought after visa category for professional workers. And there's a limitation by statute on 65,000 cap subject visas per year. Additionally, there's another 20,000 visas available for those applicants who have earned a master's degree or higher from a university in the United States. Historically, the number of people who would like to get an H-1B visa and the number of companies who would like to get an H-1B visa for an employee is much higher than the 65,000 plus 20,000 master's cap that are available. So there are some categories of employers who are cap exempt. And one of the categories are universities, colleges, nonprofits, and research organizations. But explain for our audience how it works that you can get if you come in on a cap exempt H-1B with one of these exempt organizations, how you are then able to work for other companies.
Right. So just to reiterate, the 4 types of cap-exempt organizations are colleges and universities, nonprofit research institutions, government research institutions, and nonprofits affiliated with colleges and universities.
Okay.
So if you work for one of these types of organizations, great. You work full-time for a college or university or a nonprofit research institution, you can at any time of year be sponsored for a cap-exempt H-1B. But what Jeff so brilliantly realized and recognized in 2014 was that the law says that if you work part-time for one of these cap-exempt entities and you are in a valid cap-exempt status in the United States, then any U.S. employer that is not one of those 4 types of organizations can also sponsor you, what we're calling concurrently, for a cap-exempt H-1B as well, and you work for both organizations. You must continue to work for the cap-exempt entity part-time, but you can also work for the full-time employer.
What's considered part-time in the context of working for the cap-exempt employer?
So when Jeff started the Global Entrepreneur in Residence program, it was with the governor of Massachusetts at the time, Governor Deval Patrick,
right, and
the University of Massachusetts at Boston. And he worked closely with the general counsel at the Department of Homeland Security and USCIS to determine these measurements. And it was very critical. The governor said, I'm not signing off on a program unless you have these conversations. And they determined that 5 to 8 hours per week constituted part-time work. So everything that we built at Open Avenue's foundation was built upon the infrastructure that was recognized and developed through the Global Entrepreneur in Residence program, which ran out of universities.
I agree that it's a brilliant solution, and that's really why I wanted you to come here today and talk about it. And it's what you're doing is totally in conformity with the law, with the regulations, and it's not a loophole. What you're doing is you're partnering to arrange things so people can do incredibly important, productive work for these cap exempt institutions. And yet, as the part about the 5 hours now, has that been formalized by USCIS? So is that like a firmly accepted standard of what would constitute the amount of time they'd have to be working?
So that was what Jeff determined with them back in 2014 to 2016. And we can confirm that on over 175 petitions that we have filed for fellows in our program, this has been sufficient part-time work. And what was most important to me, James, because I come from a consulting background within the social impact world, was that we don't just employ these individuals on paper, that we build out substantial and impactful positions for these individuals to do for 5 to 8 hours per week that are actually going to build our future workforce in the United States and train American students for jobs in these high demand fields. And that is what our fellows do for 5 to 8 hours per week. It's the quality of the work during that time that they're employed with Open Avenues Foundation or with these other nonprofits that will launch Build Fellowship programs that really matters here when we talk about the entire compliance system that happens behind this program. Because if it were just a front of sponsoring part-time visas, this would never fly. And it's not the intention to build a loophole, as you said. This is finding a win-win for this country.
It really is. And let's go into detail a little bit and talk about the ways that Build Fellowship is collaborating with the colleges and universities and the other institutions that are cap exempt, and the types of work that the Build Fellows are actually doing there when they're working there part-time.
It's so exciting to see the output for students when they are able to work with our Build Fellows. So our Build Fellows, and as I mentioned, we've had 175 of them over the last few years, they spend the 5 to 8 hours per week launching build projects and build sessions. The build projects are real world projects that students are able to take from start to finish for companies and in these high growth industries. For example, if we have a software development Build Fellow from a startup, a biotech startup, they're working on new software for a biotech company, they could launch a project that shows students how, if you have a software development background, how would you apply that if you go work in the biotech industry or the healthcare industry? And students get real world experience taking a project from start to finish that they get to add to their portfolio, add to their resume. We've had many students actually get hired by the fellows and their companies because they've demonstrated real skills and real work to the fellows through these projects that they work on. And so we have 12 partner colleges and universities around the United States that see the value in experiential learning and see the value in their students getting exposure to these incredible individuals who come into the Build Fellowship program and the companies in which they work for. And they implement the programming with us. So we've had more than 1,000 students since 2019 participate in these projects with our fellows. And 98% of them say they're more prepared for career after they complete one of our projects.
Well, that's wonderful. A couple of questions. I mean, first of all, are you at liberty to let us know who a few of the universities are, if possible?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are partners. So we started in Massachusetts. It's where I'm from, and it's where we got everything going. And you can imagine before COVID, this was not a remote program. Everything was happening in Boston. So we are partnered locally with Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology, Mass Bay Community College, Worcester State University, and we recently partnered with Simmons College, and we have partnerships nationally. So we're partnered with Queens College in New York, Illinois Institute of Technology, the University of North Florida. Out in California, we're working with the City College of San Francisco, and we're partnered with Vanderbilt University, which I'm an alumni of. So it's really exciting to go back and work with them.
That's great. And I lived in Boston for several years, so, and went to law school up there. So at
Amazing.
That's great. But is it entirely STEM fields, or because the H-1B visa is not limited to STEM fields, right? But is the Build Fellowship limited to STEM?
So historically, for our first 5 years in operation, we had fellows in STEM and business fields join the program. Now that ranged from marketing to finance to business intelligence, all the way through, even architecture. So we really pushed out of the traditional, what you would categorize as STEM and business. Urban planning, we fit into that category. But as we've continued to work with universities, we realized that there is demand in a variety of industries for students to get this kind of work experience and this kind of exposure to talent and to companies. And so we are now expanding out of STEM and business. We're looking at, potentially helping lawyers with these cap exempt H-1Bs, because students who are studying law want to learn about what it's actually like to work for a law firm and get that kind of research experience on their resume, or whatever types of projects those lawyers would launch with us. So we're quickly building outside of the STEM and business realm, and excited for new Build Fellowship programs to launch with various concentrations across the U.S.
Well, that's a great segue to my next question, which is, how far along are you with the expansion? I mean, beyond what you've done through Open Avenues, have any other fellowship programs been set up?
Yes. So we're really excited to launch 2 in the next month. We have a fellowship program launching at Dream Venture Labs, which is a new accelerator for startups in Boston. They will have a Build Fellowship open to individuals who are founders or building companies or mid to senior level talent who want to contribute to startups in the Dream Venture Labs portfolio, as well as to students who are interested in entrepreneurship. So that focus will mostly be around entrepreneurship, STEM, and business. We're also really excited to launch a program at George Washington University with Penn West. It's a new innovation hub in the Washington, D.C. area. And the goal is to bring international founders and talent to DC to launch companies and build the startup ecosystem. And so that's incredibly exciting for us. It will require that the companies are based in DC, at least part-time, but it's a really exciting opportunity for founders.
And so how do you see this really impacting on the competitiveness of U.S. Companies, and why is this good for the economy? I mean, pretend you're telling this to, the public at large, who is maybe concerned about immigration, and how is this good for the U.S. economy?
Yeah. We need the best and the brightest individuals, the innovators, the entrepreneurs, and the experts in high growth fields here. We need them building here. We need them working for companies here. And we need that human capital and that brain power behind our innovation economy. That is how we stay the world's greatest power. And right now, Congress is not moving on immigration. There's no movement. And if there is movement, it's stopped because all immigration policy is put in the minds of the public into one category, which is the border, right? The public is not able to extract how important it is that legal immigration continue to expand as the demand for global talent expands. And we are here to fill this gap because the role of nonprofits in this country has always been to fill the gap that government and the private sector cannot fill in society. And Open Avenues Foundation filled this gap for immigration for 5 years, and now we're expanding to other nonprofits who can help fill this gap and ensure that individuals never have to leave the scientists working on drug therapies, cancer therapies, and drug development, and the software developer building a new AI platform that is going to, keep the U.S. competitive in this new world of AI, that they don't have to leave the U.S. because they don't fit into a category or they don't win a randomized lottery system. And so that is what we are setting out to do at this moment and how we will keep the U.S. competitive.
Right. And I'm interested a little bit in the attractiveness of using, the option presented by the Build Fellowship for people who are potential founders, potential entrepreneurs, and who are experts in their field versus some of the other categories that we have already in the immigration law that are for people who want to start a business in the United States. I mean, we have an E-2 visa. People applying for that have to be nationals of a treaty country, but that's for people who want to come to the U.S. and start a business, and they have to demonstrate, that they have the capital and the capital's at risk and it meets certain requirements, et cetera, which we don't need to go into. There is an EB-5 investor visa program in the United States, and we have EB-1 and O-1 visas. So, can you differentiate a little bit about the types of applicants who you think are a good fit for the Build Fellowship in comparison to using some of these other visa categories?
Absolutely. And I will say that when we do information sessions and when we go out and talk about the cap exempt H-1B, Jeff and I jointly talk about all options presented to individuals. And then we talk about the fact that if you don't fit into one of these categories, this is an amazing option for you. Because you're right, James, there are categories that are built out. And if you are extraordinary in your field and you had the foresight to think about the qualifications that it would take to get an O-1 visa, and you were published and you thought to be a judge on a panel and you fit the criteria for an O-1, amazing. You should definitely go that path. If you worked outside the U.S. for a multinational company for 1 year, or you are willing to do that, you should go up for an L1. If you are part of that treaty country and you are eligible to make this investment and start a company in the U.S., you should go for the E2. But you would be shocked, or maybe not so shocked, to know and realize that there are so many individuals who choose H-1B because H-1B has the lowest common denominator of criteria needed to actually stay and build in the U.S. or work in the U.S. It's for founders, many of them do fit some of these other criterias, but also many talk to an attorney and that attorney says, you have a 50% likelihood of getting an O-1 visa, or you have a 60% likelihood of getting an O-1 visa. And then it's incumbent upon the foreign national to decide, are they willing to take that risk? And what we've seen with our fellowship program is a 99% success rate for anyone that we bring on as a fellow. And that's because it's a clear criteria for an H-1B.
Yeah, that's true. With the H-1B, once you've got it set up, and especially if you've got tried and trusted positions or types of positions that they're filling through these institutions that you're partnering with, there's much less risk, let's say, than some of the discretionary determinations that take place in some of the other visa categories. O1, EB1, for
Yes.
example, for current, those have a high, let's say, degree of discretionary interpretation that USCIS does during the adjudication, whereas the H-1B is, as you said, much more, sort of cut and dry as to whether the position that the person's going to be filling fits squarely within it. So by vetting the opportunity and vetting the fellows, you're making it a relatively low-risk proposition. And you've said you have a 90% approval rating?
99.
99% approval rating. Wonderful. Well, let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of how someone applies for and participates in the Build Fellowship.
Yeah. So our website has an intake form. It's called a nomination form. And foreign nationals can nominate themselves if they have a company or a benefactor who's willing to support the Build Fellowship program. Or a company can go right on there, or an immigration attorney representing a company can go right on there and nominate a candidate for the fellowship program. And we go through an evaluation process to determine, is this individual qualified for an H-1B? Is this individual someone we feel would add value to students' career development? And are they willing to make this commitment for 5 to 8 hours per week to work with students? Because if not, this is not the right fit for them. This is not sign on the dotted line for a visa. This is, are you willing to contribute to these schools and add value to students while working for your full-time employer? So we go through that evaluation process to ensure that this is going to work. Then we contract with the company that wants to have them full-time in the United States. And that company is supporting the fellowship. They're saying, we want to give this opportunity to this individual to participate. We care also about pipeline development. A lot of our companies see huge value in our fellows training students and getting access to those students who are being trained at our schools. And then we move forward with petition development, which takes about 6 to 8 weeks to get an approval on one of our cap-exempt H-1Bs. And they're able to start working for the fellowship, and then immediately after, any U.S. employer. And attorneys listening, you would file a concurrent cap-exempt H-1B on behalf of your clients at that time that our visa is approved. And people continue to work 5 hours per week. The fellows continue working 5 hours per week in our fellowship and full-time for their employer.
Okay, a couple of questions. First of all, as you expand the Build Fellowship, do you intend to maintain the condition that the positions, the cap-exempt positions that they're going to be filling part-time, involve the training of U.S. students? Is that something which you see as hardwired? Because that's really, that is the part that shows to the world that this is something that helps the U.S. students sort of increase their competitiveness.
Yep. So we think of two things when we think of how we grow and build. One is compliance. What is compliant regarding, per the immigration, per the law, per the legislation around cap-exempt entities? So we have active working relationships with our university partners. That means we continue to have all of the fellows in our program add value to our universities. Today, that is through training students. Is there a world in which we add value to universities in other ways, and universities work with us to identify what those alternate types of value are, where these fellows are working within their field of expertise to add value to the school? Yes, I'm always willing to get creative on programming and ways that we add value to schools. That's really fun. That's ways that we continue to evolve the education programs that we run. The other thing that we think about is impact, right? What is going to be most impactful for the foreign nationals to do for that time? What keeps them employed 5 to 8 hours a week, legitimately contributing to the future U.S. workforce? And so we're always balancing what is compliant, what has to happen, and what is going to be most impactful for U.S. society.
Now, is the Build Fellowship, can someone be nominated as a fellow if they're abroad or they're not presently here in another status, or they could be either?
Either. Absolutely either. You know, when you're abroad, you have to go through the extra hurdle of going to get your visa stamp and making that appointment and getting through that appointment. So the quickest path is for individuals here who are filing change of status, but it's absolutely also open for individuals who come from abroad.
And who would be covering the costs of this? Are there any costs to the nominated fellow, or how does it work?
An individual can never pay for their own H-1B, right? We know that individuals, you know, the Department of Labor has strict guidelines around who must pay for the filing fees and for the visa applications. So we never have a foreign national pay for the Build Fellowship, because as part of this Build Fellowship, there is a sponsorship component. And so we have the companies who are nominating an individual, or a benefactor nominating an individual who's willing to cover these costs of the fellowship, sponsor the costs for the program and the financial, and back the financial, you know, make that financial commitment for the individuals who go through the fellowship.
Now, suppose they participate, the fellow begins working at the cap-exempt position part-time, and they also find an employer who wants to hire them or work in a private company, which then files their concurrent cap-exempt petition. Do they need to, suppose then the 3 years of the cap-exempt H-1B is used up, in order to keep the position that sponsored them for the concurrent employment, do they have to renew the cap-exempt position as well, the first cap-exempt part-time position?
Right. So we file a 3-year cap-exempt H-1B. We have a 6-month minimum in our program, but we do encourage that every single fellow in our program enter into the lottery year after year. Because while we obviously want to offer this program to individuals to get in, to be part of this fellowship, we also want individuals to move forward. The whole point is for individuals to move forward on their immigration path in the U.S. So we want them to enter the lottery. We want companies to simultaneously start green card applications for these individuals. And they could stay in our program for the full 3 years, and we could file an extension for another 3 years, and we have. But for the most part, within those 3 years, before those 3 years are up, individuals typically have an alternate path. They either win the lottery or they have a green card started for them. And we've had a lot of individuals file O-1 visas because they worked on meeting that criteria while in our program. And so there are various ways in which you exit, but we are, of course, willing and able to file an extension for individuals who need to maintain cap-exempt H-1B status.
Okay, so that's kind of an important thing to understand. It's a detail, but it's an important one to understand, is that the concurrent petition that gets filed by the, let's say, private employer doesn't transform and become, you know, cap exempt for purposes of renewals. They must, in order to have that available, they must maintain the first cap exempt petition, which is the part-time position. But once they're here, they are actively looking for expanding their options, and you're providing navigation or guidance on what the options are. I mean, what's the extent of your involvement in helping them to find, you know, a path forward from the initial position?
Most of our fellows have their own attorneys, right? They come from referrals from their company's attorneys. And so those attorneys that partner with us are advising the individuals on next steps. We don't do that. we, will give that, we host monthly immigration Q&As, and we'll answer questions as we go. And we're more than happy to refer them out to immigration attorneys if they need advice on their next steps. But for the most part, we partner with immigration law firms that are advising their clients on their next step in their immigration journey, and they send their clients our way and then continue to advise them for future O-1s or lottery applications or the green card petitions.
And how do you reach attorneys and how do you partner with them? How does that take place?
Yeah. So for the most part, it's been, a lot of word of mouth, and we're constantly reaching out to attorneys. We're at AILA every year with a booth. And Jeff has been on AILA panels talking about CAF-exempt H-1Bs. We just started a new partnership program where we will start working with law firms to create, referral pages and referral networks where individuals can be referred to one of our Build Fellowship programs, and we will refer individuals back for additional support from those law firms. So we see a lot of opportunity to work closely with law firms across the country to support their clients, and also, make sure that we can bring them clients as well for those next steps in our fellows' journeys.
Are there steps that you take to ensure that everyone's maintaining compliance, that the nonprofits or college and universities are maintaining compliance, the employer who files a concurrent petition is maintaining compliance? Because H-1B has, a fairly large number of regulations, and then making sure that the fellows themselves are, acting within the scope of their status. I mean, how do you keep everything?
We built this program slowly but surely, piece by piece, based off of the compliance necessary to run a CAF-exempt program. From 2018 to 2023, compliance has been first and foremost as we took every single step forward in building out the program. Now what we're saying is we're going to have the Build Fellowship run all compliance behind the Build Fellowship programs at nonprofits around the country. And so for the new Dream Venture Labs Build Fellowship program, for the Penn West GW Build Fellowship program, for Open Avenues Foundation, the Build Fellowship as an entity will be running the compliance behind all of these programs. It is top of mind. Nothing happens if this is not compliant. And so my role as CEO of the Build Fellowship is to ensure compliance across all of our Build Fellowship programs.
Understood. Well, how would you measure the success and the impact of the Build Fellowship over time? I mean, what do you really want to see in terms of some markers that this is, it's succeeding? I mean, it has succeeded, but what are some of your goals?
That's a great question. So we're focused on the number of Build Fellowship programs that launch around the U.S. this year and in the future. We're focused on the number of companies that can retain and keep foreign talent in the U.S. because of this fellowship program. We're focused on the number of startup companies that are able to stay and build in the U.S. because of this fellowship program. And we're focused on the number of students and Americans working with these fellows who are building careers in the U.S. because of this fellowship program. So it's really about the ability for these, on one hand, it's the infrastructure that we're building out this year and in the future for these fellowships to scale. It's the number of individuals who access the fellowships themselves and are able to stay, and what they're able to do in the U.S. because they stay here. And then it's the students and the schools and what the impact is for them and the careers in which they are able to launch because of the Build Fellowship. And that's what we're tracking through surveys and data collection, and robust systems that we've built out through the Build Fellowship over the last year.
And you've described some of the programs that the fellows participate in, but is there a place, I mean, either on the website or elsewhere, where someone could go if they wanted to see examples of the types of research or published content or the instructional sessions that the Build Fellows are contributing to?
Yeah. Well, openavenusfoundation.org has an entire page of these really exciting build projects that have launched, that are current actually and are currently running with our university partners. That is the best collection that we have externally, where you can really see the incredible work that is being done and that students can access from these fellows. So if you go to our webpage at openavenusfoundation.org, there's a career pathways section. You see all of our college and university partners and the projects that have launched and the data about the impact that those projects have on our college and universities. We also will be launching the same type of web page for our new partners, but you can see more historical data on Open Avenues Foundation's website.
We mentioned biotech and we mentioned innovation in general, but are there specific industries where the fellows have really tended to excel or what that have been most successful? And are there any sectors or industries that you're eyeing for expansion?
Historically, because we started in Boston, we had a concentration of biotech companies and startup biotech companies that really wanted this solution for scientists and key personnel at their companies. We still have a large cohort of biotech professionals. We also have a lot of software companies, technology companies with developers and engineers that go through our program. We have a lot of financial institutions with investors or financial analysts that go through our program. And we're definitely looking to expand more into that space. And really, machine learning and AI, we're seeing an increase in volume for those individuals with specialized niche machine learning skills coming from abroad who have different types of training. And I think that is a really interesting point here, is that different countries have different professors at their schools with different specialties, and it results in individuals having expertise internationally that we could really use to forward these industries. And we see that a lot in the sciences. We see training that has happened abroad at specific universities in Germany, for example, where the biotech companies here really want to access that type of skill set. And so we've worked on building out those pipelines from those schools to the biotech companies that need that type of talent. So, as we look at expanding industries, we're really looking at where the demands are. The semiconductor industry is desperate for talent. And can we work with those companies focused on increasing semiconductor talent to bring the best and the brightest here with this program? That's something I'm very interested in diving into. And listeners on this today might say, I know an industry that really needs an innovative solution to bring talent to the United States or retain talent because they have a massive concentration of international students applying for these jobs and therefore a retention problem. And so that's really what we're focused on moving forward.
Have there been certain countries that have really predominated in terms of producing fellows, or is it widely distributed?
It's widely distributed. We have 30 countries and counting, probably more than that at this point, that we have fellows coming from. Of course, because of the numbers, we have a large amount from India, but we have fellows from all over the world, and it's really exciting to see the diversity in our large team meetings. It's one of my favorite parts to see just really where everyone is coming from and the value that companies find in talent from across the world.
Well, how can organizations or companies or individuals who think they could play a role in the Build Fellowship, how can they get involved and how can they reach you?
Yeah, so on our website, www.buildfellowship.com, you can reach out. There's partner pages. You can learn more about how you whether you're a company, whether you're a law firm or a nonprofit, how you can engage with the Build Fellowship, and you can reach out to contact us and get more information. And one thing I'll say is that we are looking to launch Build Fellowships in regions across the United States. So for lawyers, for companies, for nonprofits who are interested in figuring out how to implement this talent solution for their own, region or local population, or the regional innovation centers that have launched across the United States from the CHIPS Act, we are able to support with a Build Fellowship program. And so we're really excited about a future where individuals start contacting us because they see this potential to partner and launch these Build Fellowships.
That's amazing. I mean, it really is, I think, a win-win proposition. I mean, the policy, motivation behind, the immigration laws around employment-based immigration. I mean, we want to bring people here who are going to help build the U.S. economy. I mean, U.S. has the most dynamic, most powerful economy in the world. And in order to retain our global standing, one of the things that we've traditionally done is leverage talent from around the world. And looking at this as a way to, get people who are going to help drive innovation in the United States, get the most talented people in the world to come here and participate, and allow the U.S. and U.S. students and U.S. industry to benefit from their expertise. That's really what it's about. It really seems like a solution whose time has come, and it seems like something that really works. And it's making the most out of the system, really. But Danielle, what message would you like to convey to our listeners who are interested in learning more about the Build Fellowship and its impact?
My message is let's build together. So we're really in this growth phase. We're really open to partnership. We're really looking to expand this and make it something that is, the AmeriCorps of immigration. We want to have individuals who are qualified, who are excited to be contributors to the United States, adding value to our colleges and universities across the country. And if you want to be part of that, our ears are open and my calendar's open. So please reach out.
That's great. And Danielle, it's been so great talking about the Build Fellowship with you. And we really appreciate you being with us here on Immigration Uncovered.
Such a fun conversation, James. Thank you for having me.